Welcome back to Meet the Muse. If you're new here, this is the third episode in my Effigies of Power series. In the first two, we brought back the funeral effigies of Elizabeth of York and Henry VII. Now it's only fitting we turn to their son, the most infamous Tudor of them all, Henry VIII. But instead of wives, politics, or scandals, today we're focusing on something stranger and eerier: his funeral effigy. The idea for the series began when I first saw the relics of the funeral effigies still kept at Westminster Abbey. Today they're just fragments: Catherine of Valois, Henry VII, Elizabeth of York, decayed faces and worn figures. I had a hard time imagining what they looked like in their own time. But once, they were vivid, awe-inspiring, and disturbingly lifelike. Using first-hand accounts, contemporary sources, and AI reconstructions, we'll reimagine how England mourned their king in 1547. For centuries, English kings and queens went to the grave not only with prayers and processions, but with life-size figures made in their image. These effigies were startlingly lifelike. Carved in wood or molded in wax, their faces were often taken from death masks, capturing bone structure, wrinkles, even flaws, in a way marble or bronze tomb effigies never could. Imagine a Holbein portrait in 3D. The king's own garments, crown on his head. Some even had real hair. The effect was uncanny, almost like a life-sized, hyper-accurate doll. Only this doll carried the weight of royal majesty. And they weren't just for show. While the real body lay embalmed in the coffin below, the effigy was displayed above it. This allowed the monarch to be mourned in public, and even paraded through the streets of London so thousands could look upon their ruler one last time. Most of you already know Henry VIII's reputation: 6 wives, a break with Rome, and a reign remembered for both splendor and tyranny. But for our purposes, what matters is not his politics or his scandals, but the final image left behind. Henry as his subjects last saw him, a last performance of majesty, before he was sealed in the vault with his favorite wife, Jane Seymour, the mother of his son. I didn't originally plan on having Henry VIII in this series because his effigy didn't survive, but we still have his funeral accounts, so why not? That absence brings both a challenge and a freedom. We can't study the figure directly, but through descriptions, we can imagine him anew, without fragments to confine us. But Henry's story can't be told without his 6 queens. Which of these 6 women had their own funeral effigy? His first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Despite being set aside in life, she did have an effigy at her funeral. Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, both executed, were denied that honor. Jane Seymour, beloved as the mother of Edward VI, received a full queen's funeral, complete with an effigy. Anne of Cleves, though she lived peacefully in England long after her annulment, she did not have an effigy. Catherine Parr, Henry's final wife, also went without, but she became the first in England to have a Protestant funeral. And all 3 of Henry's surviving children, Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I, they would each have funeral effigies of their own. Henry VIII's funeral followed the traditions of a king. Above the coffin lay his effigy, not hidden away, but on full display for all to see. His coffin was carried through the streets of London on a great hearse, draped with a ceremonial covering and drawn by horses. In Tudor terms, the hearse wasn't a carriage at all, but the towering wooden frame raised over the coffin in effigy, draped in banners and lit with candles. They were used in the procession and while the monarch lay in state. Though we don't have a detailed list of banners, it's almost certain they would have included the Tudor rose, the fleur-de-lis, and the royal arms, just as in his parents' ceremonies. Just before reaching its final resting place, Henry's body lay in state from February 2nd to February 14th at the Chapel of Whitehall. Once at Windsor, his final queen, Catherine Parr, attended the funeral mass. We're fortunate to have a detailed description of Henry's effigy from a contemporary chronicler. It reads almost like an inventory, but it lets us picture Henry's final image with extraordinary clarity. Then follow the chariot with the coffin and the corpse, having the king's effigy lying upon it, made and appointed as follows. The effigy was made very like unto the King's Majesty's person, both in stature, favour, form, and apparel, which was laid upon the coffin with 2 great cushions under his head. The imperial crown of England, of gold, was set with precious stones, and under that a nightcap of black satin, set full of stones and gold, was upon his head. His shirt, as it appeared about the collar and hands, seemed to be of fine goldsmith's work. The effigy was apparelled with robes of crimson velvet, furred with miniver, powdered with ermine. The collar of the garter with a George about his neck. A crimson satin doublet, embroidered with gold, and 2 bracelets of gold about his wrists, set with stones and pearls. A fine arming sword was at his side. The scepter was in his right hand, and the orb in the left. A pair of fine scarlet hose, and a pair of crimson velvet shoes. Upon his hands were a pair of new gloves, with many rings set with rich stones on his fingers. This gives us a very regal, larger-than-life image of Henry's effigy. From this account, we can picture Henry's effigy vividly. It was accurate in size and likeness, suggesting a death mask may have been used. His robes were crimson velvet, furred with ermine, the traditional mark of royalty. He wore the Order of the Garter with a George pendant, St. George slaying the dragon, at his neck. Now I'll show you several reconstructions numbered, so it's easier to follow along. Which image do you feel captures Henry best? Tell me in the comments. For all the episodes in this series, I've been experimenting with AI image generation to visualize these lost effigies. It's a fascinating and often controversial tool. Getting Henry VIII's effigy right was especially challenging. The wax texture was difficult to replicate, and it took many refinements before the images came close to the descriptions. Even so, none are perfect with all the details right. But perfection isn't the goal. It's about bringing the gap between imagination and history and giving us a glimpse of how the lost tradition might have looked. Even if the clothes weren't exactly historically accurate, or if the atmosphere and styling was a little too unrealistic and dramatic. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more historical reconstructions, or if you're curious about the real inspirations behind literary characters, please consider subscribing. This channel is still fairly new, and every like, comment, and subscription helps more history and Tudor fans find their way here. Next time we'll continue this series with another royal effigy, so make sure you don't miss it. Any suggestions? Because history isn't just words in a book, it's something we can bring to life again.